Now, officials in the U.S. have been trying to calm fears, but time and again, events have overtaken their assurances. Have a look at what we mean. This was Tom Frieden, the director of the Centers for Disease Control, in August, before the first U.S. infection.
We're confident that we have the facilities here to isolate patients, not only at the highly advanced ones like the one at Emory, but really at virtually every major hospital in the U.S.
On September 30th, Thomas Duncan tested positive in Dallas. Governor Rick Perry said this.
This case is serious. Rest assured that our system is working as it should.
And there was reassurance from the White House.
Every hospital in this country has the capability to isolate a patient, take the measures, put them in place to ensure that any suspected case is immediately isolated and the follow-up steps that have been mentioned are immediately taken.
But healthcare workers weren't so sure.
We want to make sure that we have the correct equipment, right? The protective equipment to protect both our patients and ourselves.
Do you have hazmat suits available to you now?
Not that I know of.
Duncan died October 8th. 4 days later, nurse Nina Pham got sick. Federal officials were now discovering what healthcare workers had warned about.
The proof of the pudding, the training was not adequate. It was not adequate. The training was not adequate. We've got to make sure the training is adequate.
The director of the CDC, who in August said he was confident, said this yesterday.
We could have sent a more robust hospital infection control team and been more hands-on with the hospital from day one. I wish we had put a team like this on the ground the day the first patient was diagnosed. That might have prevented this infection.
Now let's bring in Dr. Jon LaPook in our Washington newsroom tonight. John, first of all, you've been talking to your sources in the medical industry, and I wonder, how was the nurse, Amber Vinson, allowed to fly?
Well, one health official said to me, somebody dropped the ball. And I then called the CDC, and the agency said that this nurse, Nurse Vinson, did in fact call the CDC several times before taking that flight and said she has a temperature, a fever of 99.5. But the person at the CDC looked at a chart, and because her fever wasn't 100.4 or higher, she didn't officially fall into the group of high risk. Now, I think what's disconcerting to people is that you would think common sense would tell you, well, after the first nurse, Nurse Pham, became sick with Ebola, you would have thought, well, out of an abundance of caution, why don't we just keep her there and not have her get on the flight?
This has been a week that has shaken many people's confidence. What are the lessons learned so far?
Scott, I think even the CDC themselves were taken by surprise by this, by the fact that they thought that this could be handled by any emergency room, any hospital in the country. And it turns out there were a lot of mistakes that we've seen in Dallas. So they're calling audibles. They're now reacting to that, and they're synthesizing new plans. They're sending in SWAT teams, and they're turning up the heat on every hospital, every emergency room across the country, saying to be prepared. Now, the question is every hospital prepared? And real questions remain about that. But this is not the time to throw out science. We do know that the way that the community is protected is through the health measures that are well known to protect them, which is finding somebody, isolating them, finding their contacts, and doing that. And that is being done.
Dr. Jon LaPook, thank you, doctor.